Coming up on this week's Secrets from a Coach.
So the opportunity is to refine that energy, not by chipping away at that person's self-esteem and self-belief. So it's not about gaming or playing games. It's about clarity upon expectation.
I will ask because I care. And rather than just give up on it, I'm going to explore with you as to what can we do.
Secrets from a Coach. Thrive and maximise your potential in the evolving workplace. Your weekly podcast with Debbie Green of Wishfish and Laura Thompson-Staveley of Phenomenal Training.
Debs.
Law, you all right?
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm all right, actually. I'm still buzzing, actually, off of last week's little chat that we had, because I just thought it was just amazing.
Oh, my goodness. So if you haven't listened to it, this is the main thing. We started off talking about the power of psychological safety, which is the third in our 4-part focus, looking at energy, refuel and reset. So in our first part of this 4-part mini-series, we've looked at finishing well, keeping strong for the long run without burning out. We then had the incredible guest, Zoe Lewis, who gave some really poignant pointers and tips for reclaiming motivation when your tank feels a bit empty, particularly if you've dealt with redundancy. And then last week, so we started off around psychological safety in teams, and then we sort of, don't know how, Debs, went into the world of AI and robots, and how actually part of maybe the future skill set we're going to need is how to work alongside non-human elements in our team. So if you're working with a chatbot or an auto dialer or whatever that bit of AI might be. And actually one of the things that us humans might need to watch out is it's in turn our superpower to empathise, but it also can be our kryptonite. So hearing stories of people breaking their back to protect the machine that they're using, which is there to make safe manual handling, for example. So actually, how can we ensure that we don't necessarily use and abuse our non-human counterparts, but also we remember that they're there to help us stay safe and, kind of endure whatever performance standards that we're needing to meet. So it was an interesting one, wasn't it, Debs? You got really excited.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we did, because we realised that actually as humans, we can't help but empathise with people. And I know that's something around, some people see it as something being soft or, but actually empathy is far from it. I think it's the bit where you are actually, if you like, doesn't mean you agree with people either, empathy. It doesn't mean you rescue people. It's simply acknowledging the reality of someone's, where they're at, with their internal world before you respond or guide to them. So, what we're not avoiding tough conversations either, because sometimes having empathy with that little edge can actually be quite a tough conversation to have with somebody. But because of your understanding it from their map of the world, as we always say, it is definitely anything part, being a overly soft skill to be an empathetic leader, or to think empathy isn't something we should consider. I think right now it's one of the most important things to sort of consider, along with compassion.
Debs, love it. Got a reflection on that. I've never met anyone or heard anyone explain in an exit interview, the problem is my boss is just too empathetic. That's why I'm leaving. However, I do hear high performers and people with whom they might want to retain in their organisation leaving because there's lack of vision, standards are slipping, or they feel like there's not the right culture or morale around them. So I think it's going to be super interesting to look at why we've called this the empathy edge. So it's empathic, it's the empathy bit, but with that edge that ensures that we're not getting lost in that emotion, but we're using that emotion in an intelligent way. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Debs, there's a couple of little scenarios that people have shared with me recently, which I'd love to hear your thoughts on what it means to bring an empathy edge to real life in that moment. So I was chatting with a group of new managers on a management session the other week. And they are an international based team, but the majority of people live in or around the city, and there's where their office is. And there's an expectation for people to come into the office 3 days a week and certain days of that week. However, one of the managers was saying one of the big challenges they've got at the moment is their superstar. So the one person in the team that really is bringing in the goods at the moment has a tendency to not turn up in the office when they say they're going to, last minute messaging saying, actually, I've decided to not come in, which then has a knock-on effect with the rest of the team being able to be efficient. Thing is, how does that manager address that to bring some of that rigour in, but without spoiling the sense of psychological commitment, because that person is delivering fantastic work? So what would that mean to bring an empathetic edge to that situation?
Wow. Oh my God, there's so many angles to that actually, Laura, as you're talking. One, how can one person have so much control? And where is the kahunas of that leader manager to manage them well and set the expectations in the first place? But I think actually to be curious, if I would, as their leader manager, I would be more curious about what is going on for the individual. Yes, there's an expectation being set that they turn up, because why would you not? Because everyone else is. So what makes you different? But yeah, I think it will be around curious, open questions to sort of making sure, I suppose, that you're finding out what's stopping that individual from doing it. So, what is the hardest part of this for you, turning up at work?
Oh, good question.
Yeah. What is the hardest part of that? And not putting the guilt on them to say, well, the rest of the team do it, so why should you? Why shouldn't you? And what support would you feel helpful right now in order to get you to come in 3 days a week? Because that's the expectation we have. Because just those two questions alone can enable the responsibility is with them, while keeping the connection with you. So there's an element of being curious, not jumping to fix it for them or to help them with it. But I think also to just say as it is, what is it? What's stopping you? What's the hardest part of this for you? So you're getting to understand why they think they shouldn't, they're too good to turn up to work along with everybody else. So I think that leader manager needs to, I think they need to have quite a straightforward conversation where the accountability is still with that individual, in order to I suppose maintain and hold those professional boundaries in a way, because they're performance standards, right? That's the standards they've set for the whole team. So what's stopping this individual? Yes, they might be bringing in millions and millions, but at what cost is that going to have on the rest of the team? If they can see one person getting away with it, ultimately, you need to ask, what's really going on here? What is the real stopper for that individual to come back in? Because it's just not fair. And fairness is a massive value of mine. And that doesn't seem right. And it's just not fair on everybody else. So, I think there's a couple of, I don't know, if that answered your question, Laura.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because I think the empathy bit of help me to understand and bring in that curiosity bit, but then the context of the edge of expectations. And that's where I think as an organisation, what I think is tricky for line managers is when there isn't that clear expectation that's been set. And actually this year has been an interesting one, Debs. What I'm getting the feeling of is actually there's been a number of organisations that have gone, right, that's it. We're now going to set some clear expectations about working from home, how we manage our communication, or whatever those kind of left to come up with their own sort of norms. And actually, if it's all so agile and flexible, then it's really tricky then to have a conversation. If you've got 70,000 employees, at some point there's got to be some kind of way to organise that. Maybe if you're a startup and there's only a handful of people, it's easy to be on specific tailored terms for everyone. But I think I'm seeing it's a challenge when maybe there's some sort of a lack of clarity coming from the senior team, But we're seeing more and more of that clarity coming out, where I think people have said we've got to have some expectations, so we can be empathetic, but with an edge.
With an edge, I think so, and also, it's tough out there, and I just think they're potentially going to make a rod for their own back in relation to what happens when that superstar suddenly becomes complacent or leaves or thinks that they're too good for everybody else. What happens then? Because I suppose they're putting a burden on that they're putting them on the pedestal. Maybe they like it for now, but at what cost is that to them in the long run, I think? That's an interesting one to do. Personally, there should not be superstars. I do know there are, but they will always be your steady Eddies and Ednas. You get the people that are the pain in the bums and your nagging Norma and Normans or whatever people call them. And you do have those superstars, but if we put them out there on a pedestal, it's not helping them, and it certainly isn't helping you as the manager in the long run.
So the opportunity is to refine that energy, not by chipping away at that person's self-esteem and self-belief. So it's not about gaming or playing games. It's about clarity upon expectation, I guess, isn't it? Around what the expectations are, and want to continue your stellar career here with us. There's an opportunity to get some clarity, so we're able to sustain and maintain that. Yes,
absolutely. And being clear. And that's what we said, that it's that clarity and collaboration piece going on here, because we get into messy water sometimes, because sometimes some leaders, and we've come across them, they want to be liked and respected and trusted, and they want to be seen to be being all things to all people, and this fair and transparent, and they tie themselves up in knots sometimes because they haven't actually stopped to think about, what is it that I'm actually leading? How am I leading here? And I think that can really not help them. And I think that's where we sometimes work with those leaders, to help them to reset their boundaries, help them to reset. The reason you're in that job being paid a big fat wage is because you are the leader, and there are certain expectations of a leader that you are having to live up to.
And
fascinating.
I think it really is, because discretionary, grey area, non-binary decision making is the human edge bit. So I think this is going to be more and more of what it's going to be, for a leader in the evolving world of work, is if there aren't exact rules and it's manager discretion, then that's where these boundaries can sort of just be such a useful way to hold on to an edge, so you can be empathetic. So I've got another one for you.
Go on, Law.
All right, brace yourself. What if the empathy button has been pressed and is kind of, there's too much empathy, if there ever can be such a thing? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. There is a manager that we've been working with whom, let's say someone said, I've got a sore foot, and they'd say, have 2 months off, have whatever you need. Just take whatever time you need, because I want to be an empathetic leader. And actually the knock-on effect that then is starting to have. So what thoughts could then help just create that balance of empathy that is appropriate when you're in a role and there's a need to do things in that role? And then we are in an increasingly a perception of a tough world. So there are real life tough things that people are dealing with outside work: elder care, childcare, homeschooling. If you've got a kid who's refusing to go into school that day, that's a tough morning that you've got, before your 10 o'clock big senior meeting that you're at. So what's your sort of thoughts on, in this Energy Refuel and Reset mini series we're doing? Because that's knackering if you're handling a lot of other stuff. So I guess the simple question is, what is that balance between enough empathy but not too much empathy, so we're not creating a scenario where everyone gets months off because they've got a sore toe?
Wow. Oh my goodness. I mean, there is that tough bit that goes, that's great, just come back into work. Yeah. Or I'm going to send you some work home. And again, without going into it, I would always think first about, well, what's going on for that leader? Why do they feel the need to just say, yeah, take time off, and not necessarily think about the impact that could have longer term? I think there's also the understanding and expectation. I understand it's, it's been a tough week for you, and we still need consistent attendance to keep the team moving forward. So what would help you get back into a steadier rhythm from here? And it's the that we need to consider, not the but. I need you to still turn up. Let's talk through what your options are at this moment and decide what next step you'll take. So again, the emphasis is on the individual. And I think, your feelings make sense. That's something I always said when somebody's really up against it. I hear you, your feelings make complete sense, and you are responsible for how you choose to respond to those. So what's the most constructive move you can make next? So again, you're putting it back onto that individual to own it, rather than you fix it for them or rescue them or just not hold them to account. We are accountable for ourselves, no one else. We can be responsible and have ownership, but actually the accountability sits within us as individuals. And if the leader manager can put that back onto the individual by asking questions like that with the because I'm here to support you, I can't fix this for you, but what would you like to try first, and where do you want my help? It's putting the onus back on the individual to think for themselves about, maybe I should really turn up, or I should find another solution to do it, rather than parent them or mollycoddle them or wrap them up in cotton wool.
Debs, I think this is absolute gold. So from a behaviour point of view, it really reminds me of the skill set that was drummed into me when I was a shoe shop assistant back in 1995.
Right. Oh my God.
So there I was back in 1995, and so everyone was buying platform sandals and knee-high boots, and knee-high boots are still in. But anyway,
they're still there, and platforms.
Absolutely. So, and it was absolutely drilled into us. If there was a customer objection, you acknowledge it. So you say, yeah, I see what you mean. So what would be the heel height that you'd be more interested in? So you're keeping that dialogue open. And I'm thinking, my God, that's such a transferable skill to the world of coaching someone through a challenging issue of, I can appreciate that's a really tough time for you. So what would help then for next week? So that's that thing of someone's just dumped a problem. Do I sit there with that problem? I try and sort it out for them, which actually keeps them, might not be the kindest thing to do because it's keeping them in victim mode, but acknowledging it with empathy and then passing it to them to think and answer through. And then you've got accountability then, I guess, which gives that edge.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think that's I suppose that's the difference, isn't it? The empathy will name the experience that person is going through, or you're seeing, or you're hearing. But the boundary will name what we call the expectation around that. So both are necessary. There's the experience, but there's also the expectation of what is needed here in order to keep that performance where you need it to be, and to keep that person showing up. But I think it also still comes back to the bit that, there is the human first. Don't forget, there is a person under there. So, but the work still matters. So again, if, it is a fine line that we can tread sometimes, because, you can call it the compassionate piece around, I can see, take a moment. I can see this is having a big effect on you, because it could be something that's happening outside of their work. But when you're ready, let's step through what we can do to support you, or what needs to happen next. So you're still setting the boundary that this is still going to have to work, but you're not going just bloody get on with it, or just do your bloody job. You're not going down that route. You're still bringing them along with you. And I think that's the biggest difference is, the human first, but work still matters. And I think this is a fine line that managers, leaders have to navigate right now. And I think more so than ever, because there is so much remote, hybrid, not everybody's around all the time. And I think they have to be on their game to know around what's going on, and relating it back to, as we said, empathy names the experience, but boundary names the expectation, and then have the conversation around it.
Yes, love that. So listen, let's have a look at I'd love to hear your thoughts on a third little scenario.
Go on
And because although a lot of the conversation we have on our Secrets from a Coach podcast looks at the wonderful world of management and leadership, because it ain't for the faint-hearted this decade, is it?
No, I
Line managing
definitely don't
people.
think it is. No, not right now either.
Not right now, but there are loads and loads of people, myself included, with whom don't formally line manage people, but you have lots of conversations, interactions where you have to dial up these particular skills. So I don't formally line manage people now, but there are certain scenarios what you would describe as, oh yeah, I need empathy, but I need that edge. So I've got a slightly different scenario to run by, which I'd love your thoughts on what could help someone prepare and deliver this type of conversation. So what if, Debs, someone is saying one of the biggest challenges I have to perform in my role at the moment is I don't know what the vision is. The SLT aren't giving us the vision. My manager isn't being very clear on what the expectations are. It's impacting me and how secure and confident I feel in my ability to do well in my role. So how would I, through all of that irritation and resentment and worry and sort of fear, what would be my way of balancing the empathy and the edge if I would need to have an upwards conversation with my manager to get some clarity? Because it is now starting to impact not only my ability to do what I do, but also I'm starting to look elsewhere.
Oh my God, that's such a good one. I love that. Again, why have they not set the vision already? Because people need to know where we're heading to. But anyway, that's another point. But if that is you that is having that feeling, then you've got to own that feeling. What is it, first of all, that is triggering within you? And I think also it's that ability to have that honest conversation with that individual around, in order for us to be able to work really well and to understand where you want us to be going. It would be super useful for me to understand, what is your long-term plan? What does that future look like? Because if I can zoom out with you and look at the future state, that would be really helpful. And therefore we can then have a conversation around what does that future state require? What does the present state require? So you're challenging it in a way that is building resilience to the impact, but also putting some perspective around it. And I think that bit of around asking the question, it would really help right now if we were to. It's important for me to understand where you're coming from, and I can work with you on this, so I know what's important for you. So I think we have to be smart as individuals in asking the right question. Seek to understand, to be understood, as we know with good old Stephen Covey.
Oh yeah, ask first,
which is good. Ask
yeah.
first, yeah. And I think that's where this comes into its own. Is I will ask because I care, and rather than just give up on it, I'm going to explore with you as to what can we do in order to push forward. If we're linking it back to performance, for instance, or if we're wanting that vision set by our leader, and sometimes that's where you can say, because I'm concerned, not we, because sometimes that can put a leader off if we're going, we think. I always, from my, would always own it for myself. I believe, I feel, I understand, I am concerned. I would name the emotion that would sit underneath it, because once you name the emotion, you can sort of, I suppose, work through that. You can navigate your way through it so that it reduces sometimes the intensity of what's the underlying messaging that's going on, that you're crap and you haven't said there's a vision. You can actually do it in a way that enables a leader to, hopefully, if they're open to it, to then share their vision or be clearer on it or create more clarity around it.
But do you know what, Debs? As I was listening to you talk, I was thinking, there's also opportunity to set that leader up for success. So if you have got
Absolutely.
a feeling that your leader is a bit of a reflector, to sort of launch yourself upon that conversation saying, I'm wanting the 5-year vision, then that might not be a very successful conversation, because you might be catching that person on the hop. They might react back rather than respond. Whereas if you drop a little note saying it'd be really useful for me if we could have 5 minutes or, half an hour later on, I just want to pick your brains from a longer term perspective. So it gives them some thinking time, because if that person's got more of an introverted preference, then they might want a bit of thinking time before they speak. And if you're a bit more of an extroverted preference, you might need to chat it out in order to clarify your thinking. And that's sometimes, I think, where some of these feathers can be ruffled, where someone is more demanding an instant response over actually something quite big, but to set that person up maybe with a bit of thinking time, not to dodge it, but to give them time
not to dodge it,
to sort of plan for it a bit.
Yeah, I think you're right, Lauren. I think it's that if you have that relationship, and I think this is what it comes back to. I think you've got leader in your title, manager in your title, director, head of, whatever your title is. There is an expectation on you to be able to shape the way, the path, show the way, lead with love, whatever, all those other books that are out there around it, because that's what you're getting paid for. And if you haven't got that vision, then wow, how did you get in that job in the first place? But also I think there is an element of being accountable for those that you are leading. And if you haven't set the example, that comes back to how emotionally intelligent you are, then somebody else will do it for you. But somebody who is a colleague having to ask for that, that's a real shame, because then the relationship isn't there and the clarity hasn't been created. And then we get into that thing around what would happen if, and that's where we coach people, or we support people in having that conversation before they have to have that conversation. So, and challenging their thinking around, well, what do you already know about your leader? What might be going on for them right now? How much understanding do you have of the pressure they may be on? Not making excuses for them. So, as you said, not avoiding the conversation, but just looking at it slightly from a different perspective. I think you talk about it in the perceptual positioning piece, right? And I think that as an employee, as a colleague, if you can play through the scenarios in each of those perceptual positions, I think that can help you structure a conversation with your boss.
Oh, yes, Debs. So to put the cherry on the cake, if you like a little bit of a framework or a bit of a theory, perceptual positioning, I understand it comes from the world of cognitive behavioural counselling, and it is a way of, I call it like a 5-second scan and plan. So imagine there are 4 bubbles on the bit of paper. You're in that middle bubble. So what's going on for you before you have that conversation? Actually, I'm feeling a bit irate, so let me take a breath and let me name my emotion, as you said, and what is it I want from this conversation. That's bubble number 1. The next bubble is, well, what's going on for them? So actually that empathy bit of course, actually my boss has only just survived the latest round of redundancies. They're probably reeling from all of that ongoing change. So how do I be mindful of that when I'm asking for sort of a pay rise? No, when I'm asking for clarity. The third bubble is the fly on the wall, that sort of CCTV. So if I were watching me, how do I maintain my professional values and standards so I don't get caught in some rabbit hole, or I don't sort of, get overly one way or the other? And then the fourth bubble is upon reflection. So what's the ongoing impact I want as a result of this conversation? And it's a 5-second scan and plan. Me, you, keeping an eye on me, and what's my long-term plan can just help get a bit of balance on the empathy and the edge, I guess. It's the salt and the caramel to make a nice combination.
I love that. I just thought about that as I just thought that would be really helpful to just pause, I think. And that's the other thing. If you're having to challenge upwards, I think you need to think, don't just go all guns blazing, because that's not going to do you any favours either. But if you can just think and plan it and prep it a bit ahead and give yourself the best opportunity you can, with that rationale that sits behind it. So it's not driven from an emotional sense It's actually coming from a place of care, collaboration, curiosity, and celebrating what we can do, and that confidence to be able to do it. And I think, and that's the thing we just need to think of around, what is it that I can do? Where am I just reacting to something? Instead of pausing to understand. So again, we've got some listener reflection questions that you can ask of yourself. Where have I been compassionate but not clear? So you can ask, where have I been clear but not compassionate? So what's the story the other person might be carrying that I haven't even considered? So, and they're really good reflective questions for you just to go, so as we always know, the more we can prep something, set the tone around it, be clear on what the expectation is out of that conversation, then it can only go one way. If that's the right timing, you've got the right audience, you've done it at the right, pace moment, not just as that person's about to go and present the SLT member's about to go and present to their board of stakeholders, so you've got to have that emotional intelligence enough to look at it from a outside and take into consideration that, not 5 minutes before they're about to go into a meeting, you're going to be on a hiding to nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, I've loved this conversation. This has felt like a really good, productive end to the fourth in our 4-part focus, looking at energy, refuel and reset. So finishing well, so keeping strong for the long run. And the key takeaway from that is if it's not your first rodeo, how do you keep yourself energized when this is the umpteenth transformation project that you might have been through? The second one looks at reclaiming motivation when the tank feels empty. So how do you pick yourself up after an unexpected redundancy? What does it mean to be able to, get out there again? And, if you're not feeling full of self-belief. So we had the fantastic Zoe Lewis sharing some great stuff there. We looked at psychological safety last week, which was, if a job can be exhausting if you're constantly watching your back. When you know that others are watching your back and looking out for you, it just makes the job much easier, less energy sort of required. And so what does that mean to create a real culture where everyone feels safe and energized together? And then this one has been then how to not get so caught up in that emotional bit that you get lost in that emotion. And hopefully what's come from this is that opportunity for some practical and some strategic ways of being able to balance that empathy and the edge. So, Debs, my share the secret for this, and I'd love to hear your call to action. So my share the secret would be those 3 examples we gave. Yeah. So where a team member is starting to overly dominate maybe the influence they have on a culture, particularly around timekeeping and attendance, where there might be a scenario of a manager and it comes from a good place, but they're getting so lost in the empathy bit that actually work's not happening and it's building stress. Or you want to have a conversation with someone about leading with a bit more vision or giving them some feedback. So if any of those 3 scenarios or similar ones are ones that you've heard a mate say, this is what's going on for me at the moment, get them to listen to this, to know they're not the only one. These are things that are happening all over the world of work, which is why we need humans to be able to lean in together and handle these one-offs and these emotional sort of aspects. So cutting through all of those sort of tips and tricks, Debs, what would be your call to action so we can coach ourselves forward in the week ahead?
Oh my God, I love it. I think my call to action would be to really consider that leading with heart and empathy isn't about making work easier. I think it's about making it more human, so that human first, so performance becomes sustainable. So my call to action would be, I suppose, some things to ask of yourself, and I've written some bits down. So there's a couple of questions you'd reflect on for yourself. So for instance, I'd love you to answer these questions. The last time I felt truly understood was when... and it made me feel So that ability to make sure that I recognize when it's working and when it's not, because that can really help. Another question I'd get you to ask yourself if you're listening to this is, what does leading with heart look like for me in real behaviours? So rather than just have it playing out in your head, actually, what's the reality, that it's going to bring? And then what boundary or expectations do I need to hold with more clarity and kindness? Because as we said, it's that ability to be kind, have clarity, have that edge, but also have that accountability that goes with it. So yeah, they would be a couple of things. The edge part is the empathy plus accountability, I think. So just reflect on it for yourself. That would be my call to action.
Oh, love that, Debs. And, I think there could be a number of different hats we have on when we're reviewing that, whether it's in a partner role, whether it's in a friend role or a parent role, that, not just in the sort of the parts of life that we're paid for, it's the unpaid moments as well.
Yeah, definitely. And how we can be better at that. Yeah. It's awareness, isn't it, Laura? It's just awareness of self starts with, but also awareness of the impact that you can have, but also reading the room with others. What could be going on for them? Do you even know? Have you even got a clue? And if you haven't, I always say, okay, I need to maybe understand a little bit about what's on their plate right now. What challenges they've got. How can I support? I'm not taking it off of them, but how can I help them in that moment in time?
Beautiful. So this has been the final in our 4-part focus, Energy Refuel and Reset, which means, Debs, new mini-series.
Shiny new toy.
Shiny new toy. And the point of recording is going to be December. So we've got
my goodness.
3 parts. We're going for the triple for the next month ahead.
The power of 3, Laura. You
power
like 3.
Oh, we love it. Yeah, love it. And this is going to be all about slowing down to go faster. We're going to take you through some processing and some thinking tools that can help keep centered if everything is whirling around. Taking a pause, not with guilt, but with the strategic intention to be fresher and brighter as a result of taking that moment of pause. And we're going to do a renew new year, your year in review. So we'll do a live get reviewing with us. So I'm really looking forward to that. So Debs.
Yeah, me too. Can't believe it.
Yeah, I can't believe it. Can't believe we're here at the end of, this is now over 5 years we've been.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Riding this carousel of content.
Yes. And look how it's shifted and changed in 5 years, Laura. Wow. Who would have known, eh? Who would have known?
Would have known. So I think we need to say a little thank you to Aerophone at this point in time for
I think we should.
Making us sound so great. And when Adam and James, we first started off with Adam and James, Adam said it's creating bubble gum for the ears. And boy, have they gone and done that. So thank you, James, for keeping us sounding great. And content is all ours. So any negative feedback, that's for us. But we know that from an aerophonic point of view, you always make us sound fantastic. So thank you.
Huge thank you. Well, have a good week as well, Laura, won't you?
You too, Debs.
All right. Love you lots.
Love you.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at contact@secretsfromacoach.com or follow us on Insta or Facebook. If you're a Spotify listener, give us a rating as it's easier for people to find us. And if you want to know more, visit our website, www.secretsfromacoach.com, and sign up for our newsletter, here to cheer you on and help you thrive in the ever-changing world of work.